Welcome to HR on the Rocks, a podcast for professionals that takes you behind the closed door.
Hey, everybody.
All right. Continuation. Here we are.
Yes, so welcome back.
This is part two or part three?
This is
Two.
Yeah.
I ditched the tie altogether this time.
Me
No
too.
tie. It's time to get down to business.
Yeah, we're just gonna continue the discussion of interviewing techniques for success. So, part two of some practical advice, real world application. And I think today we're gonna start up with Justin. Let you break the ice.
Really?
Yep.
Always this guy.
Yep. So last time we discussed nonverbal cues when assessing a candidate, but what about when a candidate really does have the experience and they would be a good fit for the company, or they seem like they'd be a good fit, but they simply aren't skilled at interviewing. Their interview skills.
Just like taking a test, right? And you
right.
gotta, because how many people we know are smart enough that are horrible test takers? I can look at some of my own children and myself in the mirror on that one, right?
Sure.
Great on a certain part, but hey, can't do this. Okay, fair enough. There's ways you can go about it. One of the easiest is actually trying to get them to relax, because if they're that type, usually they're nervous about the interview. And whether it's the hiring manager or it's the recruiter, it's trying to actually, throw some real softballs in there. Ask them what color the sky is today. Ask them, and it sounds basic, but we live in such a remote workspace hiring process now that most of the time you might be talking to somebody who's not local where you are. So actually talking to them where they are, getting them to kind of just chill and relax for a little bit, and then really kind of diving in. And, you got to also tap the brake on yourself too. If they're really good, then you have to kind of slow play that as well.
Okay. I like it.
No doubt. Yeah, and so I'll jump in there too, Melanie. So on the flip side, right, from the candidate's perspective, I think it's one of those things where you always so preparation, I think, is really the best answer for that. So making sure that you understand everything that's on your resume. So like there are a million ways to get your resume up to speed, and in some cases, like you can hire a consultant like Impact to help you with getting your resume started and moving forward, right?
Shameless plug. Good job.
Shameless plug. Yep. Check. That's one for me on the box for today. So so the reality is, like, you can get someone else to help you to do it, but you have to understand what is on your resume to begin with, because if someone else is writing it for you and then they put either something that's not accurate in there, or you put something that's not accurate in there, it's going to be hard for that false memory, essentially, right, to come to mind during the process of the interview. And so making sure you prepare and you understand like what's on your resume, what applies to the position that you're looking to fill, and then getting into like the question itself. The preparation is the STAR method. That's probably the most common method that's out there for answering an interview question, and it's real simple. Like STAR is an acronym and it stands for situation. So you kind of walk through like what is the specific situation that you found yourself in as you were about to embark on doing something for your business or your company or whatever. And then the task. So like very specifically, what did you do, right? How did you address whatever that situation was? And then the action. So like, okay, now you did something to address that situation. And as a result of it, like you did steps 1, 2, and 3. And, there was a journey that ended up taking place there where you ended up having to work with this department and that department. And so you had to coordinate with other parts of the organization, or you had to work with other folks that have different skill sets, like the legal team or the finance team. And then ultimately, and the most important part that a lot of folks don't speak to, both on the resume and in the interview itself, is the result. And that's the one that I think will get you. That if so, like the most generic resumes that I've seen out there, the most generic interview questions that I've ever had answered is they just talk about this nebulous situation, and they're like, yeah, and we got it done. And it's like, no. Like, you got it done. That's great.
What's
Right?
what's the process?
What did you do? How did you do it? And then ultimately, like, what was the outcome? And sometimes it truly, like, one of the best responses I've ever gotten to that, the end result was failure. That individual completely fell on their face,
I was
and
actually just about to ask you that, if that was,
yeah,
because that would be something I would have come. Yeah, that's
yeah, it
good.
was you, Justin. I'm kidding.
Thank you. All right. All right. We're just going to continue. Okay. Sounds good. All right.
Zinger number one. But
Well,
yeah, so I think preparation is
big
the short
goals.
answer there. Yep.
See you later.
See you later.
Okay. I like it. And so, kind of Jake for you as well, and this may be a similar answer, but do interviewers ever get nervous when interviewing candidates? How do you handle that? And for also for a candidate, what tips for nerves other
Yeah, I
than
think
a strong drink?
That's what I was about to do. Okay.
Yeah.
No, we do not recommend that ever. That's actually
Justin did recommend. So fun story time. Justin did recommend that to a candidate one time, and this is at a company where he was recruiting for me, and probably the very first week I'm on the job, someone walks into my office and they sit down and they're all serious and they're like, yeah, Justin, he told a candidate that there's a liquor store right across the street from where they're at, so like maybe they should go grab some alcohol and have a drink. And I'm like, okay, and they're very serious, like, well, that's a real problem. It's like I understand why you think that's a problem, and I understand why someone who, maybe they have a history of alcoholism in their family might be offended. But at the end of the day, come on. Like, why are you in my office right now? Why are we having this conversation? He's an employee. Unless you're firing him for that, and that already happened before I got here, like, leave that alone. But anyway, I digress, right? So I think
stealing my stories.
I know. Justin, I can write a book about the stories I have about Justin.
Thank you.
But I think it comes down to a couple things. I think preparation is part of it, obviously, as I talked about. So I'm going to answer this, Melanie, from the candidate's perspective. So if I'm the candidate, making sure I'm prepared, making sure that like I walk in the room and I'm positive and that I'm not negative Nancy. No one wants to work with negative Nancy. And not to be gender specific there, negative Paul or Nancy or whomever, right? But I think being positive and being professional. So like sitting up straight, being respectful to everyone that you meet, dressing appropriately for the interview, and we kind of covered that in the last part. But I think those are kind of the keys for me. Justin, what are your thoughts around the hiring manager's perspective?
I pretty much echo exactly what you have as well. And you got a tempered enthusiasm, because I think, especially more along the hiring manager, when you start talking to somebody and you realize that they're the fit, and if it's somebody you've been looking for a really long time, you can't just sit there and then automatically, and let's say you have 4 other interviews lined up that day and you're talking to this person, you can't sit there, oh, you're hired. Let's calm down. We know that do your due diligence. And as hiring managers, we've all been there, right? Everybody has sat there. They've talked to the perfect candidate. They've talked to this person who's incredible. Just like you said, calm down, take a little breath, ask some other question that's off the wall, like even if you're face to face, and ask some just to calm your own nerves, because we've all run into the perfect candidate, and you don't want to seem eager as well, because then next thing you're going to be agreeing. Go ahead, Jake. What you got?
No. Fun story time. So I
Go ahead,
definitely
bring it.
this is a fun one. It actually, as you were saying it, and the way you were saying it, kind of sparked a fun memory. So,
But am I wrong, real quick though?
not at all. Of course
I
not.
mean,
No,
yeah, you've gotta just
yeah, you got to play it cool, right? You've
yeah.
got to make sure that you can be enthusiastic. So I was in that position one time, and it's funny because like the way that I closed the interview was this like, okay, so let's say for a moment that you walk away from here and in an hour or tomorrow, I give you a call and I say, hey, interview went well, congratulations, we want to make you an offer. So let's just pause the conversation there, the hypothetical. How would you respond? What do you want that offer to look like? What do you think, makes sense for you? And so this candidate sits there and they like sit back and oh yeah, I can, okay. So they lean back and they're like, well, first of all, I'm going to I'm gonna make you sweat. I'm probably gonna hold out and ensure that you really really want me, because I think that if you don't really want me, like I don't really want you either. And so, I'll probably make you wait for a little while. On top of that, like, what's the pay range for this role? Like 120, 140, something like that. Like I want 150. And I can tell that you want me. So if that's the case, like at this point, I'm going to make you sweat. I'm going to ask for more money than you could probably even afford. And, I think that those are probably that's probably the right place to start for me. And I mean, at this point, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm all excited up to that question. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts. We'll be in touch. And being in touch was like the email that says, I'm sorry to inform you that unfortunately we have gone with another candidate for this role, right? Like, what are you doing, knucklehead? And so, I think somebody at some point informed this kid, and he was a kid, like he was maybe 22, 23 years old. And no offense to anyone that's listening that's that old. But the reality is, like, I wish I could look back at my younger self and like we talked about in like some of the first podcasts, right? There's moments where I could just smack myself, like, what are you doing? And someone gave this kid advice, and it was the wrong advice. And that's how he responded to that question. And it's like, I was excited. I was ready I was legitimately about to hire the guy. I was asking the hypothetical just because, like, I wanted to get him a little juiced and feeling it like, hey, like, there's some chemistry here. This is good. And it fell apart.
Okay.
Do you like that
Good
one, Melanie?
times.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, but to clarify, did he make you sweat?
I was sweating up to the point of like, I'm really excited and want to hire this guy because he has all the skills. He represents all the skills that I think I need. And then when he responded to that question, I'm like, well, I'm not sweating anymore. And thank God I dodged a bullet there, right?
And now he's CEO of John Deere, right?
Or something, right?
Or something. And I'm not
Yeah.
pointing out, but you know what I'm saying. It's usually
Yeah.
those who
He's
walk
probably
in,
successful.
and there are going to be
It's
people who look at this podcast and go, "No, be a complete jerk, be an ass."
yeah, the confidence.
Works.
Right.
Yep.
So, okay, that's good. So I kind of, would like to get into introverts and extroverts because I think that plays a role in the interview process on both sides. Um, so, Jake, again, for you as a self-identifying introvert, as you've said before,
Yep.
and as someone that maybe um, isn't always as verbal, but you have more thoughts about things than you maybe verbalize. Do you have any tips for hiring managers or for candidates that are introverts and they're feeling unsure about the interview, or how they're going to come across, jitters, I guess, leading up to that, or what they should do, what they shouldn't do?
Yes, for sure. And I think I think it's one of those things that it's a very, very fine line from my perspective. So I'll answer it from the candidate's perspective, Justin. I'll let you handle how you might feel from the hiring manager's perspective.
Sure.
But I think what's that?
I said, sure.
Okay.
I'm
So
actually agreeing with you
yeah, for once, right?
for once.
So I think as I look at especially like my younger self, that as I was coming out of the military and interviewing for those first couple of roles, as I embarked on my civilian career, I think the biggest thing from an introvert's perspective is making sure that I am vocal enough about the things that I bring to the table without being overly vocal, because like I think it's easy to very, very quickly overcompensate and start to tell all the stories and get very specific about how and why you think you're a fit. And the reality is, like, until you're in the role itself, you probably don't have a good grasp of what the role really entails. And so you probably shouldn't present yourself as if like, oh, I'm the guy and I can handle anything, right? Put it all on my shoulders. Now, you very well may be the guy and you very well may be able to handle anything, but like there's an element of humility, and that's from an introvert's perspective, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've gotten throughout my entire career, even like at West Point itself, is people thought that I was arrogant or thought I was better than other people. The reality is, like, I was doing one of two things. I was either keeping myself, Justin, thank you, thanks. I was either I was either like keeping to myself in my introverted world, right? Like I'm running back to my room and I'm avoiding the social situations because that's not where I'm comfortable. That's not what I get energy from. And so they think like, oh, he thinks he's better than us. Like he doesn't have to be in the social situation or want to be in the social situation that we're a part of. And so it's really interesting looking back and seeing why they came to those conclusions, because I think that there is a very real element to that like I keep quiet and I don't talk. Then when I do talk, like I'm pretty confident in what it is that I have to say because I've thought a lot about it. Like I've sat and really, really chewed on whatever the topic or the issue is. And a lot of people that tend to be more extroverted, I think they tend to just that's how they process everything,
We
right? They're
we
talking.
shoot from the hip.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
shooting from the hip, and there's a lot of like, this is how I solve the problem. I talk and I get it out and I share all my thoughts, and it's just verbal, it's verbal dumping, and that's okay. But that's just not how I've gone about the problem solving process. And so from a candidate's perspective, I think it's maintaining balance in ensuring that the manager understands like that you're capable of whatever the skill set is they're addressing or asking about, but also ensuring that you're not being overly confident and taking that a step too far. That's probably the best advice I can give.
Melanie,
Okay.
quick anecdote before I get into my side.
Okay.
As much as Jake is introvert, which I'll agree, and we all know I'm an extrovert, the times when we walk into a casino, Jake and I, the roles are completely reversed. It is the funniest thing ever. I will shut up and I'm serious, and Jake's like, woohoo! Who are you? Where are you from? And I'm like, okay, we don't need to know everybody at the table. It's not that big a deal.
Okay.
We're never going to see these people ever again. And it
Yeah.
is a complete reversal. And you're talking about my happy place, where I love to be more than anywhere else. Nah, complete opposite. I am a complete
but
introvert.
but you hit the nail on the head there. For me, it's the fact that I will never see that person again.
Person again, yeah.
So it's like like we could talk about whatever. I'll share my whole life story,
Sure.
whatever.
Sure.
Okay.
So, and being an introvert, or sorry, extrovert on
Yeah.
the problem is, and see, this is where it goes. It's being readily engaging. Okay.
Okay.
What I mean by that is all of a sudden you've interviewed somebody, you've had this great conversation, you go back and look over your questions or notes of whatever you've wanted to ask them, you literally ask nothing. And that's usually what happens
Yeah.
with extroverts.
Yeah.
And that goes either way with a candidate or a manager hiring. You've got to stick. You can go off script some, but you really need to stick to a script because we get so wrapped up in our own selves and our own talking, we don't either A, ask the right questions or forget to, or B, and then you're struggling, you're like, yeah, I think they trust me, I've done it.
Did we talk about that?
I
We talked
know.
about that.
Sure we did. I've done it. I know. Or, if you're a person interviewing for a job, you spend this person, we've talked about it last episode, show them respect and not driving in a car, show them respect on their time as well with answering what they're asking you and not going down this path that, has nothing to do with anything they're asking you about. And it's really trying to stay on point. And it's very difficult, but that's why I've always recommended having a script, having certain things, even if you're a candidate and you're being interviewed and you know what the job is and you've looked at it and they're interviewing you off your resume and job description, write those things down in those high points of how you can really sell yourself. And then if you're also doing the interviewing as well and you're a hiring manager, stick to a script. You've got to have these questions answered. These are the most important ones you need answered, and really, really have that there so you can consciously look at that, ask those questions, and move on. Because, like I said, I'll be the first one to admit I am guilty, guilty, guilty. I will, and guess what? Probably on these podcasts, we go back and look at it. No idea where I was going. Actually, I know there's one podcast in particular.
Did it involve a little too many rocks?
No, it was.
As he pours himself another drink.
It was the bottle of champagne before the rocks. That was the problem.
It was, yeah. Well, and just to piggyback on that before you move on, Melanie, I think the balance aspect of that is probably the most. So if I were to summarize that in a word, I think balance is probably the key. So if you're the extrovert, maybe make sure you stay on script a little bit. If you're the introvert, if they ask you a binary question that's essentially a yes or no, like don't just respond with yes. Say yes, and then maybe add some color, right? Add some flavor to that question, as opposed to just like, well, yes. And you walk away and you're giving your mom or your dad or your trusted advisor the playback, and they're like, well, so what did they ask you? And like, the yes or no question comes up, and so how'd you respond? Well, yes. That's it. Like, no, you probably should have added something a little bit more there, right?
Yeah, make it memorable.
That's right.
So I think final question for
bring
this
it.
episode, if you're ready.
Ready.
So this one kind of goes into potential, but how can we redesign interview questions so that they focus not just on past experiences, but on a candidate's ability to learn, adapt, innovate in new situations? Or can you? So can you assess potential?
Justin, do you want to take that, or do you want me to go first?
That's a good one.
It is a
You
good
know
one.
what? Can
It's
I
very thought-provoking.
assess potential? Yeah, but I'll be honest with you. I've done it before and I was completely wrong. 100%. And I think you have to admit, and I think that's good for any hiring manager to admit, right? Got to admit failure, but all right, go. Let me think on this. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah.
Thanks. Why are you making me think?
I don't know.
It is. It's a good question. It is a good question, and I think
Jackass.
So I think for me anyway, as you look at potential in that word, right? I think past performance is a great indicator of future performance, and we talked about that before the podcast a little bit. Like that's a quote that is it's a very real quote that I think applies in a lot of phases of life. Now, on the same token, I think there's a lot of value in if you have someone that has a ton of potential. So in other words, like they're very intelligent and capable, and they come, let's say you're in oil and gas and you're hiring for an oil and gas role, but you're interviewing an individual that comes from tech or comes from manufacturing or whatever the case is, right? They're in a different industry. I think there's a lot of value in bringing a high potential individual into a different industry because they've got good critical thinking and reasoning skills, and I think that's really like the key to potential, right? I think you can look at an individual and say, okay, this individual is, for lack of a better way to put it, they're Justin, right? They're a dum-dum.
That's two.
Shots fired.
That's two today.
Shots fired.
Tonight.
Justin's not a dum-dum. I'm just teasing. But you can look at an individual and say, okay, like they're good for a task, right? And doing something that's very repetitive over time, and they'll nail it every time, and that's perfect. That's what you need. And then there are individuals that, to your point, Melanie, like you want someone with a lot of potential. And I think that in an interview setting, the easiest way to get at that is trying to meet out or understand their prior success, right? Like what are the things that they've done where they've encountered a very complex situation, they figured it out, and then they addressed it, and boom, you've got this end result. And they go through the whole STAR method and they're able to articulate that, right?
I got 2 words for that.
Seriously. I can't wait to hear them.
Learning agility.
Learning agility.
They're learning.
Yes. No, I think
That's
spot on. That's spot on. And I think so.
See, dum dum, not dum dum.
Dum dum. You don't bring me gum gum. That's a good movie quote, by the way.
It is. It is.
If you have kids,
I was going
that's
there.
a great movie
I was
quote.
going there. You picked it up. Yep.
But anyway, so I think at the end of the day, like there are some really great tools out there and organizations that have really great tools that assess potential. Some of those are just learning agility, like Justin pointed out. And so, it's a broad-based learning agility assessment, and you can give an individual an assessment prior to moving forward in the process. Now, my recommendation for any hiring manager out there that's listening, like don't make them take that prior to the first interview or the screen or even the hiring manager interview. Like go through the process a little bit, like get to know them, get them invested, and then ask them to take an assessment and say like, hey, we want to get to know you more before we put you in front of a panel of people that you're going to like work with, like these 2 people, and then other people that are on the team that you're going to like, so other departments and individuals on the team, like we don't want to waste their time because now we're talking about man hours that we're taking away from the business. Like at this juncture, like we're going to give you this assessment, and that assessment could be like a leadership potential kind of assessment where you're evaluating, does that individual have the mechanics or understand the mechanics of leadership versus, does that individual understand how to be an agile learner, like Justin pointed out. And so like leadership versus a non-leadership role. And so I think at the end of the day, there is, and I've said that a couple times now, but I think there is very much so a way to get at that. It's very difficult to do in an interview aside from evaluating their history and their previous performance. I think the only real way to evaluate potential, because it's so easy to miss or get wrong, like Justin pointed out, is you've got to give them some kind of assessment at a certain point. And again, do not make that certain point like, oh, before you do your initial screen with the recruiter, take this assessment. Like, stop.
No.
Why am I doing that? Why are we doing that? Right. So
it's
Justin,
also getting it. No, it's getting to their curiosities, right? And that's what you're really looking for. Now, depending on what type of job, when you're the hiring manager, but at the end of the day, it's their curiosities and not curiosities. I mean, sure, the external fine, but the internal curiosities. And, like we were talking about, the learning agility and that curiosity of because Jake, to your point earlier, there are just worker bees, and there's nothing wrong with that.
You need worker
We
bees.
have to have that. But when you have people that ask questions, now sometimes those people like me, you don't want working for you because I pick out every little, but why? But there's there's a but why with two. And my mom always used to do this to me. You aren't the but why inquisitive, you're the but why can't I, right?
Right.
Because that's two. I mean, we can say can't I and inquisitive are the same, but no. There's a really, but why? I really want to learn and know, and then there's this
challenging the establishment versus like challenging the idea.
The idea, yes. And I'll let everybody decide which one I am, and that's fine. We all know it, but learning and understanding it, and those are the type of people what we were just talking about, and hey, that's very important. And it's something that, really needs to be looked at. And I think sometimes it's overlooked, to your point.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
Melanie, I'm going to stop you there because I know you're about to wrap us. But I'm going to put you on the spot, and we did not do this before or talk about this in any way, shape, or form. So, Dustin, I knew you'd love this. So, Melanie,
let's go full Superman.
This is a wrap. This is a wrap on season 1, right? So, Melanie, we've done all the talking on this episode, so it's your turn, right?
Yeah.
As you look back at season 1, what are your reflections on season 1 as a whole?
As a self-identifying introvert, I'm going to need some time. No. Oddly enough, I found some of the non-HR topics that we discuss, like things that are fun about HR, or even rap songs and coping mechanisms. I found some of that to be a little more fun to talk about than some of the standard advice, which is also good. Lots of story sharing with that. But I think my takeaway is I want to continue with music and rap songs and anything else that that relates very loosely to HR.
So maybe we start season 2 with a rock song, or maybe jazz, silent jazz flute.
We still got to complete the HR rep song. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Well, I think season 1 was fantastic. I enjoyed it. I hope the listeners enjoyed it. Justin, Melanie, thank you. Can't say thank you enough for all your insights. You guys are awesome.
And the impact y'all are making on this podcast.
Hey, there it is.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Good job. Points for Melanie this round.
I don't think there's any points for me any round.
Oh.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm used to it.
Hey,
it's all right. We'll work on that in season 2.
You can always be Superman next year.
There you go.
Well, there's one way to make an impact. So
that's right.
There it is.
Hey, she's on the board.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. That is a wrap on season 1.
Yeah.
Cheers. Go make an impact out in your little communities or big communities, whatever they are.